Thank you very much. We will now have a session that will look in depth at the EBRAINS services and their way forward. And Jan will stay on stage to lead that discussion. Thank you very much.
So welcome now to this session on the EBRAINS research infrastructure. So with me on the stage here, we have Stephen Vermeulen, who's the Chief Infrastructure Officer of the EBRAINS AISBL. Also very involved in this is Thomas Lippert, who is the leader of the computing services work package in the EBRAINS project. And on my other side, Yannis Ioannidis, who is the leader of the modeling services work package in the HPP, and he is also the software director. And myself, Bjaalie, I'm leader of the data services part, and I'm the infrastructure development director of HPP. So we will take a little look at the EBRAINS research infrastructure and its history. So EBRAINS started as or the Human Brain Project started as a FET flagship project in 2013 and has a 10 years perspective until 2023. HPP, the Human Brain Project, has done scientific work and is still doing scientific work during this time. And there will be a continuation of this scientific work with different funding sources, of course, continuing after 2023. Then we have an infrastructure part, which started also from the very beginning by so-called HPP platforms, ICT platforms that were released in 2016. Then they were moved into what we call a joint platform. And in 2019, this joint platform received a name, EBRAINS, EBRAINS Research Infrastructure, resulting in 2020, last year, in the formation of also an EBRAINS legal entity based in Brussels. And we're now continuing to build the research infrastructure into the future. And that brings us to going a bit deeper into the research infrastructure.
Yes, I think it was already very eloquently mentioned, the enabler that EBRAINS wants to be, enabler for research, and even Professor Boon mentioned that. So I'm not going to go back into that. The initiator is kind of the extension of that. EBRAINS wants to initiate also these transformative projects, but also new research projects that will come along. As already mentioned by Jan, the research will continue even after HPP. But there's two other things that I want to mention, and that's EBRAINS is a leader, as it wants to be the research infrastructure for neuroscience. And that's a key statement, because it's really bringing things together on this one infrastructure and really be a pan-European instrument for neuroscience. And I would say brain science in general. And then that other keyword, the catalyst, I think that's something we've learned from HPP, is bringing together different expertises, bringing together different people, sharing that expertise, and basically being a catalyst in the chemistry between all of these people, between all of these expertises. That's really what EBRAINS wants to be. But there's one thing that's not on this slide. Well, of course, S3 was mentioned, and I don't go in that. I think Pavel mentioned that quite a lot in the previous session. But one thing that's not on this slide, which I often get as a question, is what's in it for me? And I think Yannis can help us with that.
Thank you, Stephen. Actually, let me show you the roadmap of what will follow among the three of us, how EBRAINS has evolved and will evolve for the researcher or the researchers. So I will take a short trip in time from where we are now to as much future as we can predict or foresee, I should say. And we'll do it in ways that are categorize you. we'll look at the individual researcher. We'll look at groups of researchers collaborating on something. We'll look at formal consortia that are being formed in order to implement a project, write a proposal and implement a project. And we'll also look at formal organizations, research performing organizations. And we'll see them through time. As you can see, they are in 4 stages. You'll see what the stages are. But in principle, there are no strict lines between one and the other. It's in the flow of time. So let me start with EBRAINS by the Human Brain Project. Where are we now? You see on the left the 5 main elements of what the HPP has produced or is producing. Data and knowledge, atlases, simulation and modeling, brain-inspired technologies, and medical data analytics. These are 5 pillars of what HPP has been working on for the past 8 years. So in each one of these cases, for each category of researcher or researcher groups, what have we been offering? Well, for the individual researcher, we want to help him or her do the research. We offer strong tools, focused services, and we develop the services. The researchers develop the services. We have teams that help the development of services, and the user support that we offer is across the board, from the initiator of the users to power users. And that's something that brings us to services that are at a level where the researcher can be free of whatever is happening and move forward. In the same spirit, for groups, we offer collaborative tools, multiple researchers to work in that direction. For consortia, it was not just HPP, but we have tens of partnering projects that have been brought to work with us with HPP. And then for organizations themselves, we have EBRAINS partners. This is how we've been working on, and what comes next. Jan, can you tell us?
So here we have a picture of the research infrastructure as we will see it emerge. It is there already. It will become more mature, and it is delivered to the community at this point. It has a base infrastructure, the yellow ring in the middle. That is basically the high-performance computing services we have from the Phoenix consortium. Surrounding that, or deployed on those on that base infrastructure, we have tools and services, and they cover a range of areas. So again, we have data, so the data are coming into the system through a curation process. The data are, when possible, aligned to or registered to what we call brain atlases. It is possible to search for these data through the data knowledge services, and also actually through atlases in some cases. Then to use various analytical workflows to analyze data, and in some cases extract features that are relevant for model building and move into the simulation domain, which again continues into neurorobotics and neuromorphic computing with simulation and emulation. On the right side, you have the same boxes as the previous slide, emphasizing for the individual researcher at the HPP finish line, there will be more across tool usability, meaning essentially more functioning workflows. Also, we could emphasize that at the HPP finish line, EBRAINS, already supporting projects, will be supporting more projects, and at the organizational level, that we will have national node consortia and a growing community in that regard. So when then leaving HPP, if we compare today, we have an EBRAINS research infrastructure, and we would have a large circle which would be the scientific activities of the HPP itself. So leaving HPP home, we will have more scientific projects connected to EBRAINS, using EBRAINS. These are the smaller circles surrounding. And they can be small or they can be big. And they will be using EBRAINS. So now, if we look at the box to the right, we will see a few changes. For example, on the group level there, emphasizing full support for sensitive data storage, service for sensitive data as an example of something that is coming into the future and will be tremendously important. Also at the organizational level, that there will be partners joining and EBRAINS and playing a role in moving the organization forwards.
And then moving on, so where do we want to go with EBRAINS? What is the ultimate goal? I want to emphasize a couple of things. First, we obviously want to grow the number of users and people that are using the platform. Today, we already have more than 800 institutions connected to EBRAINS. That number has to grow and will grow, and is kind of depicted here by this interconnected graph. That's really what we aim for. This is the synergy between all of these researchers, all of the institutes working together on EBRAINS. And then a couple of highlights, because to be honest, those 4 boxes are just highlights. We obviously offer a lot more, and that's what you've seen in the last couple of days in all of these presentations. But the highlights here, from the individual level, I think also mentioned data is quite important, and there are more and more of this research is going to be in applied research towards health, or towards the other half, as Professor Boon was saying it, the ones that are not anymore healthy. That is really, we're looking at connecting closely to everything that happens in Europe around data, and that's today it's the data spaces that's starting, and that connection is going to be clearly driven by EBRAINS. Although EBRAINS is already taking some steps now and will be taking that more steps, we see a connection to the European health data space then as particularly important there. Another thing that I want to highlight again is the consortia. So EBRAINS, as mentioned by Jan just before, will be surrounded by projects. That's how the science will be done. There is, of course, the idea of having the partnership and the BRAIN initiative as well. But that is really a driving asset that EBRAINS will take very, very close to heart and drive these projects, join the projects, but really look for 1, enablement, and 2, these transformative projects that help building the research infrastructure as well. And then from an organization point of view, of course, by that time, the national nodes or the national EBRAINS instances should be created, and we have multiple members that are together driving EBRAINS as an organization. So, Yannis, I think you can take it together from here.
Yes. So I showed you before the roadmap, but without the roads and without the main milestones in this road. This now captures what Jan and Steven and myself alluded to and highlighted in the various stages. For the individual, we start with tools and services that we have now, and we move on to community engagement, complicated workflows Jan emphasized, search and notification so that the system itself to be like your collaborator, and European data spaces. As Europe moves, EBRAINS will be moving there to give access to European data spaces, not just for health, through EBRAINS. For groups, collaborative tools, but then again emphasized before, sensitive data services. Cannot underestimate this need that neuroscience and other sciences have, and we can provide them. Consortia. We've had 1 consortium of the Human Brain Project. Now EBRAINS is a legal entity, becomes a partner in projects. Already this has happened. And other organizations together with EBRAINS, participation in national research infrastructure, the roadmaps. EBRAINS is in S3, the hubs, the national hubs and the national nodes of EBRAINS will be in the national roadmaps, should be in the national research infrastructure roadmaps, and data federations to do the medical analytics, to do a whole bunch of other analyses that we need in order for neuroscience to progress. And then individual organizations become a partner of EBRAINS, or if cannot do that, become associate partner of EBRAINS. And the national join the National Node Consortium in your member states, associated countries. These are key highlights where we see how eBRAINS is progressing through the years. And let me go back to the very beginning, the here and now, tools and services for the individual researcher. Services, what kind of services? What do we mean? Stephen?
Yeah, I can definitely shed some light on that. So HBP has and is delivering a number of services. There's more than 200. We talk about new services to be added to the platform. What does that mean? And actually here we want to depict that we are seeing them in different tiers. So we basically see those tiers across who is actually creating them. Is it a small group? Is it a group that's looking at a large user base, or is it even commercial services? What is the use base? I mean, is this for a closed community? Is this for a group of scientists working together? Or are we looking at large user bases, commercial user bases? And then of course, linked to that, that's actually not a driving force, it's more a consequence. How is this supported? You can go from best effort all the way to dedicated SLAs for commercial services. And of course, that has an impact on the cost of it and how it needs to be budgeted. And that links then to the last point that's on this slide is the commitment. So the commitment that we expect from those services or from the service providers, from the members, from the groups that are delivering the services. Either it's a limited commitment in case of a best effort service, it's someone that is able to pick up the phone or in these cases mostly answered by chat. But in commercial services, we of course expect a long-term commitment because that's promises we will be making to potential customers. Now let's be very clear, we are not expecting every service to become a commercial service. Actually, we don't have any at the moment. It's an avenue we will venture into. There are questions about that, but that's going to take some time. Even when we look at the large user-based services, so the tier 2 as it mentioned here, and don't spend too much time on what is the number meaning, but there also we need a long-term commitment because actually this is a promise to the science community that this service will be available. Below that you see the supporting services. This is all the services that are being used by others, but also the platform that actually brings together this and is actually the fundament of the research infrastructure. And because we are supporting those tier 2, tier 3 services, you see the same driving requirements there, that the quality needs to be at least at that level, and we also expect that long-term commitment. And that gives you a bit of an idea on how we are going to support services in these different tiers and what the discussions are going to be into how are we going to support that. And then I think what's something we mentioned before, this is like, okay, we've taken you a bit through time. It's a dynamic platform, but what is driving that dynamic and what is really behind why this change? What are the drivers for change? And Yannis, I think you can shed some light on that.
Thank you, Stephen. This is, if you want, a bird's eye view for what we have in eBRAINS. At the middle, we have two technologies that are, if you want, independent of anything else. You have data and the related technology, and we have computation. These two are the foundations on top of which we bring in advanced technologies. On one hand, modeling and simulation, some generic, some specific to neuroscience and to what HPP has been working on. And on the other hand, we have artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, and so on. And then around these, we have the specialized user tools and services that the individual users or the groups that we mentioned before will be using. This, if you want, is an abstraction of all the technologies that the Human Brain Project has been working on and eBRAINS will be bringing in the years to come. So what happens from 2023 and beyond? How are we going to proceed? Well, there is a virtuous circle that we expect between new technologies that arrive in these areas or maybe in other areas, and brain-inspired sciences that we want to serve with these new technologies. And it's a circle. New technologies bring in and affect the sciences, the brain and brain-inspired sciences, and these sciences then feed into generating new technologies that may also feed further into brain and brain-inspired technologies. This virtuous circle is the one that we'll be treading in the years to come. And in addition to technologies and the science, there is a cross element that we should never be forgetting, that these new technologies raise a whole bunch of new challenges in terms of legal complications, regulatory, ethical complications that we always have to have in mind, both before technologies and science progresses, but also after what we do. And this is another dimension that will define progress, the technological progress of eBrains in the years to come. And if you want to get a small glimpse of some of the things that are in front of us, not very far. For example, when it comes to to machine learning and artificial intelligence. Currently, we talked about, and a whole bunch of discussions these 2 days, you've seen standard and deep learning and progress and various types of neural networks. We're moving into equitable AI, explainable AI, various other types of machine learning, some that we don't have a concept of right now, that we nevertheless, we see the insights that will be affecting the brain research and neuroscience. We have complex data, lots of complex data in our knowledge graph and other repositories. How do we move to private data, to synthetic data? New requirements that are coming from the volume or from the speed that we acquire data. When it comes to computation, we are based on Phoenix. What comes after Phoenix, after 2023? Is it EuroHPC? Is quantum computing? We're all looking into all these. And of course, modeling and simulation. Lots of generic modeling and simulation, but now we have been moving and we'll continue moving to personalized, finer-grained modeling and simulation to be able to apply it in ways that is customized and adaptive. How are we going to tread this circle between new technologies and brain-inspired technologies? There are a whole bunch of technologies. We've laid down a whole bunch above, some less exotic, some more exotic, and so on. The key word in all this is co-design. eBrains will be interacting with the scientists, the potential users in a whole bunch of ways that HPP already has laid out, and will continue and grow and evolve in order to see the relevance of these technologies and co-design eBrains further out. It will not be just intimately involved entities and intimately involved scientists and engineers in eBrains, but with the community, we'll talk about the relevance. And the new tools and services will be integrated into eBrains. What makes sense? And as the needs evolve from the scientific user community, the individuals, the groups, and so on, we will be adapting eBrains to serve these needs. This is in the first page of any book that talks about infrastructures, research infrastructures. eBrains is that, and eBrains will be doing that. And we will be capitalizing on the new technologies, not only looking at the science, but also looking at how this list up on top will be changing, will be monitoring, and then proceeding with that. So this is our vision, this is our plan. The key thing is, what do you want? Jan?
So let's try to summarize a little bit. What do you want? What do a researcher want? A researcher wants to have access to tools. A researcher will create an eBrains account, which is very easy and convenient to do, log in and use the system, check out what there is, will find documentation, training, opportunities to attend HPP schools and so on. We'll use HPP support, the high-level support team, by asking questions if he or she doesn't find a way into these tools and how they work properly, and sign up for various types of workshops. And the researcher will want to engage with the community. There are different aspects around that, including, for example, the community space, which actually was launched this week, and that's a dedicated application for our community, which we expect will grow substantially and be taken up. And then, of course, there is staying up to date by following what's happening in social media, looking at the type of updates we will be giving continuously on the changes on the platform. So with those points, we kind of have finished our main presentation. We now have a long list of questions to deal with here. So we can take some of those coming in now. One question is on the perspective on education. What are we doing in that domain, and how would that look in the future? I could maybe try to begin there, because in the HPP there is an education program, so there's a lot to find and to use at this point in time. As we are moving into the future, EBRAINS research infrastructure will build on having a number of national nodes. And these national nodes will not all do the same. They will be specialized in different areas. It could be that many national nodes want to deal with education aspects, and it could be that some want to really specialize in that aspect. This will be organized together with the central hub of EBRAINS. And it is really lots of opportunities there, because the more services, the better services, the more documented they are, the more accessible they are, the more easily you can use them in a number of educational contexts. Not only just for the most advanced research, but also for more approaches in fairly basic education. Just one of numerous examples. Imagining flying into the brain, learning what a brain structure is, and walking around in the brain just like you would do on a Google map, on Google Earth. This is already today possible. I'm confident it will continue to grow into the future, and with improvement on the computing side, this will be a fascinating instrument that will go all the way into schools and be everywhere. Yes, please, let's continue.
If I may just add a couple of things to what Jan said. Research infrastructures are really at the center of the knowledge triangle. They are called research infrastructures, but in addition to research, both education and innovation are very much characteristics, and that holds also for EBRAINS. And people visiting some of the national nodes, working with the people that are building the parts of EBRAINS and will be building the parts of EBRAINS, will be the ones that go out then and do research and then come back to the infrastructure. You can do research by using an infrastructure, but you also need to do research and advanced technology in building it. And this, again, it's another virtuous circle. And the educational aspect that comes from developing the infrastructure is equally valid with the use of the infrastructure. And there are lots of best practices that many other research infrastructures are using, workshops of exchange of experiences on how to use the infrastructures, to how to interact between different infrastructures, and EBRAINS will definitely be following these paths successfully.
Good, we have more questions. So one speaks to how will EBRAINS balance the focus required to deliver top quality services with limited resources versus expectations of being open. I think this might speak a little bit to the tiers of services. Maybe a little recap on that, Stephen.
Well, yes, I think it speaks indeed a bit about that. If we look at the potential deluge of new services, well, that can be handled. There's no issue, because we are a distributed research infrastructure, and everybody in the community, in the membership ring of research entities, will be supporting that. So the more we grow, the more people we have on board, and the more we can support. So that's one side of the coin there. where the other side of the coin is, where do we put the efforts? And that's really going to be driven by, we are going to be advised by a lot of areas, but mostly by a very diligent research group that's actually going to drive the research questions and going to set the priorities in terms of what is actually required from the research infrastructure for research. So it's not the research, it's, let's say, not EBRAINS centrally that's going to make those decisions. It's the wider community through those advisory bodies that's going to set the pace there, and that's of course going to be then validated with what funds are available. But that's how we are going to set priorities. It's basically the science that's going to set the priorities, and I think that covers that one.
Good. Yeah, more questions. EBRAINS will also have the potential of boosting neuroscience research in countries with limited resources through access to powerful platforms. And that is with a question mark, and the answer is yes. But I think it gives us a chance to comment and emphasize the openness part. So this is about open science, as far as we can go into the openness. And it means that most of what you can find on the platform or through the web portal to EBRAINS is actually something that is open. You can just directly go there. Some instances you need an EBRAINS account. I believe you mentioned, Stephen, more than 800 institutions, and there are several thousand accounts.
Yes.
And this is growing, and it's something you can apply for. Just at the bottom of the ebrains.eu webpage, there is the possibility to click and in one go get these accounts and then be up and running from anywhere in the world. Now, there might be some services, of course, that you can't access from anywhere, but the overall picture is that this is really, I believe, a strength.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we should not be forgetting that the European Open Science Cloud is in development, EOSC, and EBRAINS is following very closely the developments there. So whatever open science level will be offered by EOSC, EBRAINS will, and vice versa, with specializations, of course. So open science and openness in general is at the heart of what EBRAINS will be serving.
And if I can quickly reiterate something we've already said, but by creating that account, you are on EBRAINS, which means you have access to the whole community, and that's really where the wealth of knowledge is. Because you as a single researcher might be overwhelmed by the possibilities. Well, we're there to support you. That's key. With something like this, it doesn't come with a manual that is like just put this there and put that there. It's much more complex. We know that, and that's why you need help, and that's where people are ready to do that. So that I think is an important aspect of what EBRAINS will be. And is, actually.
Good. So we also have some question here related to the fact that we are not alone as a research infrastructure. There are other infrastructures in Europe. Who wants to take something on that one?
That's one for Yannis.
Yannis.
Yes, there are many research infrastructures in Europe. And if we emphasize the S3 infrastructures, which have a pan-European dimension, EBRAINS, as it was mentioned earlier, has been accepted to be in the roadmap of 2021. The roadmap will be launched in December during the Slovenian presidency event. And it's an e-infrastructure with very strong connections with the infrastructures that relate to health, Elixir, Instruct, InfraFrontier, BBMRI, and so on and so forth. And EBRAINS comes to fill a gap in the landscape of the European research infrastructures. And interactions with some of them on issues that are related that they can help EBRAINS can help them as well, are well underway. And we expect in the months and years to come to become even stronger as EBRAINS moves from the preparatory phase to the design phase to the implementation and finally, of course, operation. These phases already being overlapping, of course, because a lot of things are already operational. So we are in very good company, and the situations and the interactions will bring us into many win-win situations. And as I said, discussions are underway at many levels.
That's very good. And we are also seeing other infrastructures contacting us, and of course we contacting other infrastructures. There are in many areas we are touching upon each other's actions, and there of course there's no interest in moving into the other one's domain, but to connect so that a user, a researcher can go naturally, perhaps not always seamlessly, but at least naturally from one to the other. Leaving one infrastructure and moving into the other where you need to go for a particular type of analysis, for example, or when you get really into the depth of the brain aspects as compared to some other aspect that is covered extremely well by another existing research infrastructure. So this landscape of infrastructures is very, very important, being aware of all of them and working with them. Just like at the global level, being aware of all the other initiatives and all the other projects and trying to see how we can have synergies and work together.
But on BRAINS, we are unique.
We are unique on BRAINS.
We are unique, and we are dealing with S3 infrastructure, but also I mentioned EOSC. EOSC is a cross-discipline or interdisciplinary, or whatever the prefix is, that we are very much involved in, but also with others, open air and so on, about openness. So we are very well connected, I should say, and as you said, Jan, the interactions are maybe initiated by either one, and so...
Exactly. So for example, if you're working with, let's say, lots of images and you use another infrastructure with all these things in imaging, then you come to Brain and you say, well, maybe I should now go into the tools of EBRAINS because I need, for example, atlases or another feature. So this is a natural, it's a complete environment which I think will be very useful in the future and will help science quite a lot. So we have also a question which is a reminder that some of the slides needs to be spelled out more for more information. They're quite new.
Yep.
So there are questions related to that, which I think is a very good reminder that we need to communicate these tiers and the concept around those very well, as you started doing, Stephen. That will be a very important follow-up. And then we have a question: will members and associate members of EBRAINS have any advantages? And my general take on it is that it is tremendously important for neuroscience to have a research infrastructure in Europe. If you look at the opportunities created by having a research infrastructure in Europe and you want to stay in neuroscience, you want to make that strong. How otherwise can neuroscience compete with other fields that have well-developed infrastructures and can argue that they're taking good care of their data, they're taking good care of reproducibility and replicability, they have all the workflows? We have to have it. There's no other choice. And therefore being proactive is really the critical point. I'm sure there can be other more direct benefits, and this, of course, is also a good communication reminder. Anyone wants to add to that?
Well, I can say, I mean, I think the biggest difference, and it actually aligns perfectly what you said, Jan, the biggest difference between members and non-members is the commitment you take in driving this research infrastructure. That's really what it's about. You can be a user, everybody can be a user. It's an open platform, it's free. There's no fee for at least the basic tiers of, let's say, the normal use, the normal scientific use of the platform. There's no fee. But when you want to be in the driving seat, holding a part of the steering wheel, because there will be many, then that's where the members are, and that's really what is key. So it's not an exclusive club. It's easily accessible, but if you want, you have to express that willingness and that commitment to drive it. That's really the main difference.
That brings us to the end of this session. I would like to ask everyone for participating in this, also the audience, and asking all these relevant questions. So thank you very much.